Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, and in today's video, we gotta talk about it. We have to. Is Raid Shadow Legends in trouble? A lot of negative feelings around the community in the last few months. It seems a lot of the numbers for the game trending downwards. Things are looking fairly bleak, we could say. What is going on? What is the cause of this? What is happening? Is there any saving it? What do I think about it? Let's basically address that here in today's video, and as well referencing some of your input too to help me make my points. And actually some of this really surprised me, made me have to rethink some things. So yeah, let us dive in. So I think one of the big things to look at, Hell Hades actually had a great video on this, by the way, looking at the stats of it. And for example, you can see right here, if we look at like Google Trends, this is from the last year, so like start of October to start of October. We can see over here spiking up probably for November, December, around Christmas. But then for basically all of 2023, there's been ups and downs, but it's basically trended downwards, effectively trending downwards to the point where we're at almost 50% of the interest, right, in September, even October, that we were at back in December of last year. It's a massive decrease. And yeah, Hell Hades made a great point in his video, which was if he was, on a CEO of Plarium, if he was a shareholder or something in their company, he'd be really unhappy right now. That this trend is something to be really worried about. And that's a great point. At another interesting point in this video somewhere, in terms of, and I think this is important to break down, where he's talking about new players, right, coming in. And I think he said that oftentimes when he's been looking at it, that he has been seeing things that there would have been 1 million new players per month, and that has fallen down to 600,000, right, recently, which is a huge decrease. What is going on there? We actually have a big part of the answer already, believe it or not, which is really interesting. But I think it is important to make a distinction there that we've seen new players go way down. The reason that new players is going way down is not why us existing players are unhappy. There is some relation between the two, but it's not very direct, right? A brand new player coming to the game and downloading it for the first time, let's say something that existing players are frustrated with is mythical champions and primal shards. They're generally disliked. People don't like them, right? Honestly, most of these new players installing the game have no idea what primal shards are, if they even exist or not. They have no clue about the shards in general or any of that, right? It's easy for us to imagine, I suppose, that they might, for us who know the game really well, but these players, they just don't. Like, for example, I think this is one of Hell Hades' most popular videos recently. It's got 68,000 views, 600,000 new players per month, right? And this is what he's getting. He's getting like 10% of the new players viewing. And that's not even quite true, because how many of these 68,000 are actually new players? Probably very little. This was actually something that shocked me. I did this poll on how long have you been playing Raid, and I was shocked that less than 6 months was only 5% of my viewership. Even if we imagine that Hell Hades viewership is much higher, like potentially only 5% or less of these new players potentially are even watching, right? It's easy for us to imagine that us on YouTube, that we are representative of everyone playing the game. That is not actually true. That, in fact, a massive, ridiculously number that completely dwarf us if people are playing the game for a very short period of time, maybe a couple of days or a few weeks or a couple of months. That's where the vast majority of the player base is, and they're really not connected, not aware of all the stuff that's important to us and what's going on. That's always something that's important to reflect on. But yeah, this surprised me. Actually, this has sort of led me to think about, do I need to change my content? Like, do I focus more on like 85% if you've been playing for over a year? Do I really focus in on that? Should I be doing more to attract new players to the channel? I don't know what I should do, right? It's an interesting question for me personally. I thought that was interesting. Why then would there be less new players coming to the game? What is lowering that number so drastically? Again, we actually have the answer to this already. Now, my theories before we had the answer was that marketing could potentially play a big role in it. Maybe their marketing strategy has failed or changed. Maybe, right, the recent login legendary, Sun Wukong, maybe that just didn't appeal to audiences broadly. Like Sun Wukong, Chinese mythology, yeah, maybe is a big deal for China, but maybe Western audiences aren't really that interested. That could easily be a thing. They had the recent promotion with Stag Knight and Jontron. Maybe that didn't do well. Potential there. We've got new gacha games, Dragonair, Watcher of Realms, that are doing, I think they're doing well at the moment. I don't know. I haven't played them. I think a lot of people pointing out, oh, all the raid CCs are covering that stuff. I think most of that is sponsorships, guys. That's why they're being paid to play them. I'm actually quite disappointed I missed out on those sponsorships. I definitely would. I mean, it's a great idea. Why not? Get paid to show people a new game. It's a win-win for everybody. It's great. So why not? So I'm sad I missed out, but I think that's a big reason a lot of covering. And then also, why not, diversify if you're into that, building up a new channel, a new game, diversifying your content portfolio, exploring new things to do. That might be, number one, a great business strategy. And number two, it might be something you really enjoy. So I can totally see why like Ash and Hades and others have, channels on these new games. Totally makes sense, right? That's going on. We got 2 big new gacha games have just come out. We also got like big RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3, Starfield, Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty. Lots of big new games out as well, which could be drawing people away. So there's a lot of potential things, and probably lots of other potential factors I haven't even mentioned or thought of that could be affecting it. We already have one answer, which came from on Scratch's video, where Ash was on. And Ash was saying that, as co-owner of AMG, the talent agency I just signed on to that organized a lot of these sponsorships, right? And filters them and so on. He has a lot of insight, like behind the scenes knowledge, and he was saying that actually he's pretty sure that Plarium's marketing budget since Call of the Arbiter has gone way down. That before that they were spending between 5 and 10 million per month on marketing, and that has really fallen off from what he can tell, which is absolutely huge, right? That's a ridiculously huge marketing budget, and for them to make a cut, it's very easy to see how that could have a big impact on less new players coming into the game. Now, why Plarium has changed that, what they're going to do in the future, we don't know the answers to those questions. We could speculate endlessly on what stuff it might be, and probably we would decide on what the answer definitely 100% was, entirely based off of our own personal biases. We could have a great fun discussion. We're not going to talk about it in today's video, though. We're going to focus on this other stuff. So I think that, that's a bit of my thoughts in terms of why new players are not coming to the game as much. 600,000 per month is still a huge amount. I mean, I've got 30,000 subs here on YouTube. Thank you for that, by the way. We got 30,000 subs. There's 600,000. There's 20 times that number of my subs. New players coming to the game every month. It's still a massive number of people, but not as much as it was. Why are existing players unhappy? And again, we don't know how many are quitting the game. We don't know how much people have stopped spending either. Have they reduced spending? Is that happening? Again, it's really all rumor at this point. I will say certainly the fact that they changed Mythical, I mentioned this, the fact that they've reduced the price of Mythical Shards and are improving Mythical Shard Mercy, that definitely does indicate that certainly Mythical Shards have not been a financial success for them to the extent that they would want them to be, and that they've changed it because of that they weren't being bought enough. So that was a really good insight into it. But outside of that fact, it's really very speculatory, unfortunately. But there are a few things going on here that we can say for sure. One thing, again, that shocked me about this was that how many players have been playing for over 2 years. They're active in the YouTube community. And that makes it very easy for me to understand it's not really surprising that you might not be enjoying the game as much anymore. So you've been playing for over 2 years, right? Things get less interesting. I think with Raid specifically, it's quite an interesting case where I would say for me, my own journey with the game, I found the first couple of weeks, maybe first week or so, really enjoyable because everything is shiny and new. It was really fun. And then funny enough, probably then the next 2.5 months of playing, I barely made it through. I actually thought they were the worst part of the game by far, was the first few months where all of your campaign and dungeon runs are super slow. You're getting barely any shards because obviously you can't do high levels of clan boss. You're using like the same 5 champions for everything. And it's just this big chore to get everyone up to 60, to get them their masteries, to actually start getting new stuff and getting places. It's actually a pretty miserable time in the game. It sucks. But then, to be honest, maybe like between 6 months and 1.5 years, I think it's probably where it's at its best, right? Where you're able to actually do fusions. fairly well without too much stress at that point. Hopefully you got Nightmare, maybe Ultra Nightmare, Clan Boss down, so you're getting a steady stream of shards, which also obviously makes the fusions easier, but you're getting great new champions. You're still at a point as well where every new legendary can be massive, and also every new epic can potentially be massive as well. So you're constantly getting like new champions, updating your strategies, progressing through every area of the game at a decent rate. It's a great time. That's a brilliant time. Like, I became a content creator. So that's obviously a massive peak of personal enjoyment. When I've been playing the game for, I think, about like 1 year and 3 months or so. Around about then was when I became a content creator. So it's a real peak for me. And then honestly, you know, I can tell you this from making videos for the last while, like being a CC after, you know, I started, let's say roughly speaking, after playing for about a year, like the first year of making content. So between the 1 and 2 years was actually, you know, it was very easy to make lots of guides and in-depth, you know, dives into team building and all that sort of stuff, because it was stuff I was actively doing or had done very recently. So it was all very fresh, the strategies and things that I was doing. And it was a good niche as well, because like existing content creators have been playing for longer than this. And free-to-play accounts are usually, that CCs do, are usually abandoned before that 1 year mark. So being able to come in and make content that was really specifically, you know, targeted towards what I was doing, which was between 1 and 2 years, I found was very valuable, and no one else or very few people were actually doing that. That was my personal thing. I can certainly tell you, like in this last year, it's much harder to do that stuff because, well, I've basically beaten everything in the game. Basically beaten it. So, you know, you have to actually put in like a lot more effort in a way to do guide videos and things like that, because, you know, you have to go out of your way to do it. You're sort of fabricating it in a sense, because it's not something like, I'm not trying to beat Nightmare Hydra. I've beaten it. It's done, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, that is a big factor, and that affects everyone. Like when you've been playing for a long time, the game is just going to be less interesting. When you're pulling your shards, you know, whereas if you've been playing for 6 months, every shard can be amazing. When you've been playing for over 2 years, probably all rares, all epics of no interest. You're just looking for those top tier legendaries, and that's it. So it becomes much less exciting. Your teams change much more because you're already farming everything really well. Fusions might not be very helpful. They might just go straight in the vault because you've already beaten everything, etc. It's not surprising that the game can become much less interesting. What does Plarium do to try to address this? Well, new content, right? They make new content. And here's where we have another big part of the problem. Has the new content been good? We come up to this poll I put up 4 hours ago. We've almost 2,000 votes. How often do you do live arena? With 5% do 10 free fights daily, 5% do some fights daily, 20% participate sometimes, so not every day, 36% do live arena very rarely, and 34% never. Live arena was the big new content so far in 2023. Probably was supposed to be the big content for 2022, but got postponed because, you know, they got invaded. That tends to throw a wrench in things, eh? But yeah, like 10% of people only are participating in live arena daily with any number of fights. Then, okay, if we add all of these top 3 up, you got about 30%, about 1 in 3 people are, you know, participating somewhat often in live arena. But man, 1/3 of people are participating somewhat often. Another third are participating very rarely. I'd actually be myself in this category. Basically, I play 1, maybe 2 fights for fun. Whenever I get like the big red arrows, you're going to be demoted. That's when I do it. And then another third of people never participate at all in live arena. There is a big problem with live arena. Now, here's the thing. In my opinion, there's actually a lot of things live arena does quite well. Like the UI is sleek, it works. You find matches pretty quickly, unless you're in like top end, but that's its own thing. Like there's very few bugs or crashes. It tends to work really well, actually. So there's good stuff going for it. And also, I will say that for me, de facto, right, live arena can never be amazing, because in my opinion, PvP game modes in a game with pay to win can never be amazing content. It can be good, it can be fun, it can enrich the game, it can be enjoyable, but it can never be amazing because there's pay to win in it. That's my personal opinion on it. I believe that quite strongly. It's the same sort of thing I feel about Hydra Clash as well, by the way. It could be good, it could be fun, but it will never be amazing. It's something to enjoy casually and not take seriously because it's pay to win game. It can't be that, you know, top tier caliber stuff. right? That's my take on it. Live arena, though, it definitely seems to be on the lower end of things. I think for a few different reasons. I think a big part is losing isn't fun. That's part number one. Number two, it's very time consuming. Number three, the rewards seem to be pretty bad and just not interesting to people. So, and there's probably other factors in there as well. But yeah, it's like you can go in, it takes ages, good chance you're going to lose and get nothing. Yeah, I think that's basically it, right? And you're not going to get almost no rewards for doing it. It's sort of a combination of things that are dragging it down. So that's a problem. That stuff is improvable, so we'll have to see if they do. But even then, other content they've added in recently, like Sand Devil's Necropolis, Phantom Shogun's Grove, massive grinds. Again, I think the interest from what I've seen, and personally, and from talking to people, so anecdotal to be fair, but the interest in those seems to be really low. In my opinion, both dungeons as well, strategically, have very limited ways to beat them. It's very specific. Either you have some very specific champions and you can do it, or you can't really do it at all, is the case for both dungeons. And it seems to me that most people just don't care. Even going back further to the Iron Twins Fortress, again, I think the dungeon was a bit of a flop. I did a couple of guides on Iron Twins Fortress day one. Guess what? I'm still using the same team, like, what, a year later or something? There's just no point to change it up. I use Geomancer, and there's been no point to change it up because it's, just the best way to do it. That's it. Simple. Done. Day one. And again, I think Iron Twins Fortress is like Demon Lord Clan Boss, but really bad, right? Where they're both very simple bosses that hit you really hard and sort of ramp up in difficulty. But Demon Lord gives way better rewards. Now that you've got the instant complete, it's faster as well, less time commitment. Though before, for a long time, it was much worse time commitment. But also at Demon Lord, there's a ton of variety in terms of strategies that you can do. And progressing through the different levels of Demon Lord, because it gives great rewards and you can see yourself improving steadily, it works extremely well. I think a lot of people loved Demon Lord progressing through that initially because of that. There's also some granularity there where, to beat Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord, yeah, you could 1-key it, but you could 2-key, 3-key, you can 4-key. And again, that opens up a huge variety of teams. You just don't have that with Iron Twins. The rewards suck. There's very limited ways to actually do it in any reasonable amount of time. Basically, Geomancer, unkillable teams, and that's kind of it. Again, similar to Demon Lord, but nowhere near the amount of variety. I think a big part of that as well is there's no granularity. Either you beat it or you don't. Yeah, you could do lower stages, but then the rewards are so bad, it's really not worth the time or the energy. A ton of problems in there with Iron Twins as well. It's been a pretty, I'd say, common theme, right? The whole lot of recent content added to the game. I think that the big flagship content, like new dungeons, new stuff to do, has been pretty poor. It's been pretty underwhelming. So it's not surprising that people are getting kind of sick and burnt out. And I think they're in a sort of a weird... I think that hard mode dungeons have actually been a decent success. Hard mode dungeons receive fairly well, and people seem to enjoy those and build up the teams. Not a massive success. There's only so much team building you can do, but they seem to have been received fairly well. I also will say I do think they've done good work in the last year in particular of making like events more interesting, especially events between fusions. There's like cool rewards like souls up for grabs, which actually works quite well. Whereas I find farming Sand Devil's Necropolis like the most boring thing ever, totally uninteresting. I actually do really enjoy getting like big chunks, like 200 of the big oils in an event. Actually is a really fun reward. I actually enjoy the oils and stuff way more as in just events than I do in the actual dungeon, right? But they've had, I thought like Deck of Fate with equipment and stuff in it was actually pretty enjoyable. They've had some actually cool event structures, hit and miss to be sure, but they've had a lot of good stuff. Like if you compare it to 2 years ago, it's night and day really with the events in the game. It was a massive criticism I had back then was that events were really bland and boring. They have improved them an awful lot since then. They're more interesting. So have to give them that, to be fair. That stuff has improved, but it's not the flagship stuff, right? The flagship stuff has really floundered. Hydra was like the last big flagship thing, and it was not received very well when it first came out. It took them a few months to fix it. I think since then, I think we can look back and think that Hydra has actually really positive impact on the game. Opened up a ton of new champions, a ton of new stuff to do. It's been pretty good. Hydra Clash, I think again has the potential to be good, maybe even great, like as a fun thing to do. Like I said, pay to win, PvP, can't take it too seriously. It's never going to be amazing. But for me, like Cadaver personally, Cadaver has really taken out any interest in Hydra Clash, unfortunately. Like I could literally do no keys and it would barely make a difference, right, for Hydra Clash for my clan. Because I'm a top end clan, right? It's literally who can build the most and the best Cadaver teams. Like who has the highest awakened and empowered Brogni, who has multiple Yumikos, right? That's all it is. It's total nonsense at the moment. Now we're expecting that to change, and that might improve things. So we'll see. We'll see what sort of the balance is with Hydra Clash. It could be a fun way to like min-max teams. Should be something I should love because I'm the Hydra guy. But for me, Hydra Clash has been a flop so far, unfortunately, basically because Cadaver renders everything outside of running 3 Cadaver teams with 6 Yumikos and 3 empowered plus 6 6-star awakened plus 4 Brognies makes that all irrelevant. Hey, that's a rant for another video. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. Yeah, I think you put all this together, looking forwards, what needs to happen? We need to have good flagship content. We need to have stuff to care. Like, what is the point in farming up souls for champions or getting new powerful champions if I already beat everything anyway? We need engaging new challenges coming into the game. We have to not have these dungeons like that flop that are too limited in how we do them. I mean, it's really tough. It's tough for them to design it. I have to say, I would not want to be a designer being like, okay, how do I design a dungeon that is interesting and engaging for players who've been playing for over 2 years and have like all of these void legendaries and all this gear and all this crazy stuff? Like, how do I do that? That's a tough job. I feel for you. We shall see. I think the big hope has to be, and I think they have to knock it out of the park, honestly, has to be this new Void clan boss, which I'm hoping comes at the end of the year. We've heard that there is new content coming that's going to be massive. They've kept saying that like ascending your gear and all this stuff is going to matter, and mythical champions stuff are going to matter because of this new content. Like this new content, it really has to do well. If this new content comes out and it sucks, I think that's going to be really tough to keep players who've been playing for a long time engaged. I think you got a tough task anyway. Right? I think you got a tough task anyway to keep long-term players consistently engaged in the game, because it just becomes less interesting over time. It's just the way it works, right? Like Baldur's Gate 3 is brilliant. I'm loving it. Will I be loving it as much 3 years from now? No, it'll be something I look back on fondly. Like you can only play something so much. So yeah, that's sort of a big challenge facing Raid. Anyway, let me know what you think, guys. Like I said, I think there's a lot of reasons behind like a lot of the pessimism at the moment. It's certainly interesting to see where things go. Like I said, I do feel like, considering the downward trends and stuff, definitely Plarium, they have to change something, right? Something has to happen. They have to improve, you know, I've lost the graph. It's in here somewhere. They have to improve stuff. You know, obviously the new player thing, that's probably like a marketing thing. That's a question that they have to do. That's really not going to affect most of us players, but for existing players, they're clearly unhappy, I think, for a lot of reasons. I probably didn't cover half of them. I'm sure that most of you can write essays in the comments all about all the things that suck. I'm sure you would not only can, but gladly will. I look forward to reading them. Essays about why things suck in the game, for things they can improve. There's a lot they can do, and it does feel right now that there's a lot that they do need to do. They need some big wins moving forwards. We'll see. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.